At the airport on Thanksgiving morning, my son and daughter-in-law told me they couldn't get a ticket for me due to overbooking. "Mom, the ticket's gone. You should just go home and watch the kid," my son said coldly, not even looking me in the eye. My daughter-in-law Charlotte added with fake sympathy, "Someone has to stay with Leo anyway. You are the best person for the job." So I had to go home and babysit my grandson while they went on vacation. The next day, I saw their social media post showing they'd brought her parents instead. That is when I realized they'd been lying to me all along, and then I made an unimaginable decision. I keep replaying this in my head, how it could happen to literally anyone, anywhere. Tell me in the comments. Where are you from? I cherish hearing from every audience. And if you want more stories like this, don't miss subscribing. All right, let's get back to what happened. We were standing at the airport check-in counter on Thanksgiving morning when my daughter-in-law Charlotte suddenly looked worried and said, "Oh no, Eleanor. There is a problem with your ticket. The airline says they overbooked, and there is no seat available for you." My son Sebastian nodded seriously, looking disappointed. "Mom, I am so sorry. We tried everything. But they said the next available flight isn't until next week." I stared at them in shock. "But we booked these tickets months ago. How can this happen?" Charlotte put on a concerned face. "I feel terrible about this. We were all so looking forward to this family trip, but someone needs to stay home with little Leo anyway. He is too young for such a long flight." "Don't worry, Mom," Sebastian added quickly. "We'll make it up to you. Maybe we can plan another trip later." So I went home with my grandson while they headed off on their vacation. I felt disappointed but tried to understand these things happen with airlines sometimes. While taking care of my grandson at home, I found myself checking my son and daughter-in-law's social media every single day, waiting eagerly for news about their trip. Then one afternoon, my neighbor suddenly sent me a screenshot from Charlotte's social media that I had never seen before. The same beautiful views, the same smiling faces, but there were 2 extra people standing beside them, Charlotte's parents. "Eleanor?" my neighbor asked. I read the caption Charlotte had written under the photos several times. "Thank you to my dear father and mother for all their hard work. This entire trip was planned to show our appreciation for everything you've done for us." It suddenly became crystal clear that this long-planned vacation had never included me in Charlotte's plans from the very beginning. All my years of hard work apparently meant less to them than the occasional phone calls from Charlotte's parents. Since that was how things were, I decided they didn't need to know about the upcoming demolition news from my hometown either. My neighbor, noticing I hadn't replied for a while, sent me a video clip with another message. "Eleanor, I always thought your son was the quiet type who didn't like to talk much. Who would have thought that once he got on vacation, he'd actually be quite social." In the video, my usually quiet son Sebastian was actually talking with costumed performers at a tourist spot, but I barely had time to be surprised by this unexpected behavior, because through the noisy background sounds, I could clearly hear a conversation between Charlotte and her mother. "You really have some nerve," Charlotte's mother was saying. "Just so you could enjoy your vacation properly, you actually lied to leave the child and your mother-in-law behind alone. Aren't you afraid she'll find out and get angry with you?" Charlotte responded casually. "My coworker told me that Leo is too young, and bringing him along would make the trip terrible for both adults and children. Someone had to stay behind to watch the child, right? Compared to my mother-in-law, I definitely wanted to bring you and Dad with me instead. Besides, with one less person, we saved quite a bit of money on flights and hotel rooms. I calculated it all beforehand. The money we saved was enough for me to buy myself a gold necklace." "Does Sebastian know that you excluded his mother from the trip just so you could afford a gold necklace?" her mother asked. "What if he knows?" Charlotte replied. "I am the one who makes the decisions in this household. When I am happy, our lives can continue peacefully, and he knows how to choose wisely. Mom, just relax and enjoy this trip to the fullest." My little grandson, who had been playing contentedly beside me, perhaps feeling that I had been ignoring him for too long, suddenly reached out and knocked my phone from my hands. The screen struck the corner of the coffee table and immediately went black. If this had happened before, seeing something broken would have made me feel terribly distressed. But now, thinking about how my son, whom I had raised through years of scrimping and saving, apparently agreed with his wife that everything I did was simply expected and taken for granted, I found the situation absurdly laughable. Perhaps sensing he had done something wrong, my little grandson pretended to keep playing while cautiously observing my reaction from the corner of his eye. As I looked at his features, so remarkably similar to his father's childhood appearance, I fell into deep contemplation. This holiday vacation had been Charlotte's suggestion a month ago. She had felt that taking care of the child was too exhausting for me and wanted to take me on a trip to help me relax and lift my spirits. I had believed her completely and even felt secretly delighted, thinking that Charlotte had finally put aside past grievances and genuinely wanted to build a good relationship with me going forward. To ensure they would have time after work to plan our itinerary, I had spent that entire month caring for my little grandson from dawn to dusk, practically single-handedly. Every time I reached the point of complete exhaustion, the thought that I would soon be traveling and having fun with my son's family gave me renewed energy, as if I had received a shot of adrenaline. I had even believed what Charlotte told me that day at the airport. "Mom, I bought the tickets early precisely because I was afraid something like this might happen, but who could have known we were still a step too late? The airline oversold their tickets, and all the other flights are completely booked too. You won't be able to come with us." I blamed my bad luck and criticized the airline for being unscrupulous in their pursuit of profit. It never once occurred to me that my daughter-in-law would deliberately lie to me just so she could enjoy her vacation without any concerns. A surge of anger lodged itself in my chest, unable to rise or fall. Suddenly, I understood something with perfect clarity. I retrieved my bank card from my purse and took my little grandson out shopping. I bought myself the latest model smartphone and even joined young people in line at a trendy restaurant for lunch. When we passed by a skincare boutique and I lingered to look at the window display, a staff member enthusiastically invited me inside for a complimentary skincare treatment. I was about to wave her off politely when I heard her say, "Madam, women have the right to pursue beauty at any age. You don't need to feel any psychological burden about it, just relax and enjoy the experience." Her words struck right to the heart of what I was feeling, so I pushed my sleeping grandson's stroller and followed her inside. 40 minutes later, the staff member seated me in front of a mirror. Looking at my reflection, the same face that showed every sign of aging, but with noticeably improved skin condition, my eyes immediately filled with tears. The day my son and daughter-in-law returned home, Charlotte's mother followed right behind them. The moment she saw me, Charlotte's mother put on a bright, artificial smile. "Leo's grandma, you've really worked so hard this past year. Charlotte told me that you've been feeling unwell lately. You must be exhausted from taking care of the child. That is why I rushed over to take your place. You absolutely must go home and get some proper rest." I had indeed been feeling unwell, but those problems had started right after I began caring for Charlotte following childbirth. I had mentioned this to Charlotte at the time, asking if her mother could come help watch the child for a while so I could return to my hometown to take care of my health. But Charlotte had looked troubled and explained that her father had recently undergone surgery and couldn't be left alone. So her mother simply couldn't manage to come help. Since both Charlotte and Sebastian earned decent salaries, I suggested they hire a nanny, offering to pay half the cost myself. Charlotte still refused, claiming they were under pressure from mortgage payments and wouldn't feel comfortable leaving their child with a stranger. I'd no choice but to endure my physical discomfort and shoulder most of the childcare responsibilities, knowing how busy both of their careers kept them. During my worst period, I spent 2 straight weeks unable to walk without bending sideways at the waist. Why didn't anyone suggest I should go home and rest during that time? The reason was obvious to everyone, though nobody wanted to say it aloud. It was simply because the child was still very young, then demanding more attention and much more difficult to manage. I suppose I was to blame as well. Whenever the child cried, I couldn't bring myself to leave him. Now Leo was just 10 days away from his first birthday. He could stand and walk, could call for people, and understood quite a few words. He slept peacefully through the nights and no longer required adults to supervise his feeding during meals. Teaching him to become the delightful child that everyone now praised had required countless heartaches and tremendous effort that only I truly understood. Charlotte had decided that since the child was no longer as demanding as before and didn't require as much help from me, she could simply send me back to my hometown without even giving me advance notice. Sebastian spoke up. "Mom, haven't you always complained about your back bothering you? With my mother-in-law here, you can feel confident about returning home to rest. Charlotte kept Leo here specifically so you could spend some private time with him before leaving." I laughed bitterly. "Should I be thanking you all then? Thanking you for leaving me at home specifically so you wouldn't have to worry about the child while you were off enjoying yourselves?" The three people in front of me all changed expressions simultaneously. Charlotte gave an embarrassed laugh. "Mom, are you angry with me? I genuinely didn't realize that Thanksgiving flight tickets would be so hard to get. Otherwise, I definitely would have bought them much earlier. I sincerely apologize to you, but I absolutely never intended to dump the child on you." Charlotte's explanation was interrupted by audio content I played from my phone. Hearing her own voice emerging from my device, Charlotte's face instantly flushed bright red, and she remained speechless for a long while. Charlotte's mother's eyes darted around awkwardly, and Sebastian looked at Charlotte with surprise upon hearing her say she had decided not to buy my ticket just to save money for her own gold necklace. "Mom, this must be someone who can't stand to see our family doing well. Using artificial intelligence to create fake audio and send it to you. How could I possibly say such things?" Charlotte's mind worked quickly. The audio I had just played was indeed clear and free of background noise, making it seem very much like something that could have been artificially generated later. Actually, I had asked my neighbor's son to help me clean up the audio. The original video had too much background noise, and I was afraid Charlotte would make excuses claiming I had misheard. But as it turned out, having audio that was too clear created problems too. She would find reasons to absolve herself no matter what. Sure enough, Sebastian immediately chimed in after hearing her explanation. "That is right, Mom. Where did you get this audio? There are so many scammers nowadays, don't let anyone fool you." I didn't reveal who had sent me the audio. Instead, I found the saved video in my photo album and cast it directly to our television screen, turning the volume up loud so everyone in the room could hear Charlotte and her mother's conversation through the somewhat chaotic background noise. "This video can't be artificially generated too, can it? You all should know exactly where you went and what you did on this trip," I said, looking directly at Sebastian. This wasn't about me being unable to tolerate my son and daughter-in-law's happiness together. Rather, I wanted Sebastian to see clearly exactly what kind of person he had married. I had lived for more than half a century, always keeping busy and rarely considering what I might want for myself. I had never known what it meant to truly enjoy life. But from the day Charlotte said she wanted to take me on vacation, I had spent my free time searching online for photography, poses suitable for middle-aged and elderly people. I would constantly check the calendar, counting down the days until our holiday. For several days I had actually awakened with a smile on my face. I was 58 years old. This city where Sebastian lived represented the farthest I had ever traveled alone. I had never taken a vacation or flown on an airplane. This first trip was supposed to be at my daughter-in-law's initiative, wanting to take me somewhere to relax my mind. The excitement I felt in my heart simply couldn't be expressed in words. October 1st was the very first time in my life I had walked through airport doors. When I learned that due to lack of available seats, I couldn't travel with my son's family. I certainly felt disappointed. But seeing the anxiety on Sebastian's face and what appeared to be genuine regret in Charlotte's eyes, I felt that perhaps not going on the trip wasn't such a terrible thing after all. After all, I was already getting on in years. If my neighbor hadn't sent me that video, if Charlotte hadn't posted those travel diary entries on social media, perhaps I would have continued as before, keeping my grievances and helplessness bottled up inside my heart. But there are no what-ifs in this world. For the first time, I found myself contemplating a fundamental question. Why must the person who shows understanding and tolerance always be me, simply because I am a mother, a grandmother, an elder? Number during these days, a phrase I had once read online kept cycling through my mind. Before becoming anyone else, you are I had originally planned to have a serious conversation with the young couple after they returned from their vacation. But before I could even speak, I was informed that I was no longer needed. How could I not feel angry? Charlotte's mother excused herself to the bathroom, claiming stomach discomfort. Sebastian stared at the images on the television screen without saying a word. After a period of silence, Charlotte suddenly began crying. Just at that moment, Leo woke up. He sat up rubbing his eyes and called out, "Grandma," in his sweet little voice. I had actually wanted to return to my hometown for quite some time, but I couldn't bear to part with my little grandson. He looked so much like Sebastian had as a child, intelligent, cheerful, and naturally charming. Thinking about what I was about to do, I too felt a wave of sadness and nearly shed tears. As Leo walked past Charlotte, she gathered the child into her arms, wiped away her tears, and said with a choked voice, "Mom, I am sorry." This was the first time my proud and haughty daughter-in-law had ever apologized to me. Yet I felt no happiness whatsoever because I knew she didn't truly believe she had done anything wrong. She was simply forced to lower her head in the face of irrefutable evidence. After saying those few words, she began crying again, her sobs growing louder and louder, which frightened Leo into tears as well. "Enough." Sebastian's shout caused Charlotte's crying to pause momentarily. Though Leo continued whimpering, Sebastian took Leo from Charlotte's arms, gently patting the child's back and softly comforting him. He brought out Leo's toys and played with him for a couple of minutes. Once Leo's emotions had completely stabilized, Sebastian walked to the center of the living room, pointed at the television, and asked me, "Who sent you this video? Haven't you considered what this person's motives might be?" Looking at the anger burning in Sebastian's face, I was momentarily struck speechless. Upon learning that his mother had been thoroughly deceived by his wife, upon discovering that in Charlotte's heart I wasn't worth as much as a gold necklace, his primary concern was actually the source of the video. This wasn't the first time Sebastian had disappointed me, but it seemed to be the first time I truly understood what it meant to have one's heart completely broken. Many people knew that my son was supposed to take me on vacation, but when they saw your social media posts without a single photo of me, some people asked why I hadn't gone along. I replied, I would never tell Sebastian that the person who helped me was the mother and son from the unit next to theirs. The reason Hannah had access to Charlotte's social media was because she had operated a fruit stand outside our residential complex for a while. Since both of our families had grandsons of similar ages, Hannah and I had quickly become friends after my arrival. The conflicts between Charlotte and me weren't something that had developed overnight. After getting to know Hannah's character and temperament, I would occasionally confide in her about my inner frustrations. Initially, Hannah would console me the same way my relatives back home did, advising me to try to see things in a more positive light. But as time passed, she would invariably say, "Eleanor, your daughter-in-law isn't easy to get along with. You need to be more careful." Unlike our family situation, Hannah had a relationship with her daughter-in-law that was as close as that between mother and daughter. When I learned that her son and daughter-in-law had grown up together as childhood sweethearts, I felt envious while also thinking such closeness was only natural. Hannah's decision to initially send me screenshots of Charlotte's social media posts had been entirely her own idea. But the later video's audio clarity, which allowed me to hear Charlotte's conversation with her mother distinctly, was the work of Hannah's son. A few days earlier, when I had approached Hannah's son for help, he had shared his honest thoughts with me. "Eleanor, technically speaking, this isn't really our business to get involved in. But I often hear my mother talking about your family's situation, and when my mother was playing that video, I caught fragments of your daughter-in-law's voice. After thinking it over, I felt you shouldn't be kept in the dark. I hope you don't mind my interference." Outsiders who heard the conversation between Charlotte and her mother all thought her behavior was excessive. Yet my own son's only concern was that whoever sent me the video must have malicious intentions and wanted to destroy his family. Charlotte began crying again, while Sebastian's expression shifted several times in response to my words. Finally, he sighed. "Fine, regardless of who sent you this video, Charlotte was wrong, and she has already apologized to you. Can't we just let this matter go?" So a casual, "I am sorry" was supposed to erase everything that had happened. My nose tingled, and tears finally spilled down my cheeks, despite my efforts to hold them back. "Sebastian, do you believe that because I am your mother? Everything I do for you is simply expected." Sebastian kept his head down without responding. "I don't consider myself a wicked mother-in-law. I've even given everything I possibly could so that you two could live well together. But what have I received in return? I can't even get the most basic respect." By the end, my voice had cracked completely. Hearing the commotion, Leo ran over to me and reached up to wipe away my tears. "Grandma, don't cry, don't cry." Sebastian raised his head to look at me. "Then what do you want? For me to get divorced? Would only my divorce satisfy you? Then Leo would become a child from a single-parent family, just like I was, suffering contempt and hardship from such a young age?" I looked at Sebastian with complete disappointment. The last remnants of our mother-son bond disappeared entirely along with his words. I wiped away my tears and gently pushed Leo aside, then stood up to face Sebastian directly. "I am old now, without the physical strength to earn money or the health to continue caring for your child. In your young people's terms, I no longer have any usefulness. I also learned from looking at photos of your vacation that you get along so well with your father-in-law and mother-in-law. You are truly family with them. Since you don't lack for parents, let's sever our mother-son relationship. You won't need to shoulder responsibility for my elderly care, and I won't interfere in your family matters anymore. From now on, we'll each live our own lives without bothering each other." Sebastian instinctively wanted to refuse, but Charlotte quickly gave him a meaningful look. He hesitated. Seeing him weighing the pros and cons, I laughed coldly. "If you agree, I'll find someone right now to witness it. If you don't agree, I'll stay here and never leave." "He agrees," Charlotte shouted loudly. And Sebastian didn't deny it. This wasn't my first time considering severing my relationship with Sebastian, because I had entertained similar thoughts before. I had researched the matter online. Even if biological mother and son sign a document cutting ties, the law doesn't recognize such agreements. That is why I said I wanted to find someone to witness our decision. I wanted relevant people to know that even though the law might not acknowledge it, the emotional bond between Sebastian and me had reached its end. If he had any sense of shame, even if he later learned about the demolition, he wouldn't be able to shamelessly ask me for money again. When news of potential demolition first circulated in my hometown, Sebastian hadn't even graduated from university yet. Back then, he had said that if demolition really happened, he would use that money to start his own business instead of struggling away from home, so he could stay with me always. But circumstances change unpredictably, and those rumors had persisted for more than 10 years. Sebastian had long since given up hope about any demolition, so before they had summoned me to care for Charlotte during her confinement, when news about hometown demolition began circulating again with detailed specifics, I hadn't mentioned it to Sebastian at all. The day before Thanksgiving, I received a message from relatives back home confirming that demolition work would begin at the end of November. Because signatures were required, they insisted I must find time to return home no matter what. When I saw that message, my first instinct was to immediately tell Sebastian the news. But he and Charlotte were laughing and chatting in their bedroom, so I decided to wait and share this good news during our vacation trip. As it turned out, I never made that trip. Looking back now, perhaps heaven was protecting me. knowing my son was unreliable and warning me not to tell Sebastian everything. Actually, before Sebastian and the others returned home, I had already told people back home about everything that had happened during this past year. This time, they no longer tried to persuade me otherwise. They simply said that if I couldn't reach an agreement with Sebastian, they would come to support me. I hadn't expected that Sebastian would want me gone within a single day of returning home. I had no choice but to buy tickets for my hometown relatives to arrive the next day. Before our witnesses arrived, I didn't want to continue staying at Sebastian's place. Seeing me pack my belongings to leave, Charlotte's mother finally emerged from the bathroom and made a show of trying to stop me. "Oh my, Leo's grandma. Look what has happened. Can't we talk things through properly? Why does it have to escalate to severing the mother-son relationship?" If her eyes hadn't betrayed her gleeful satisfaction while she spoke those words, I might have believed a fraction of her concern. Sure enough, when I didn't respond, Charlotte's mother made a dismissive sound and muttered under her breath, "You'd better stick to your word and not expect your son to support you in old age. If you dare go back on this, just wait and see how I'll scold you." When she looked up and saw me staring at her coldly, Charlotte's mother swallowed the rest of her words, then rolled her eyes dramatically at me before huddling with her daughter to whisper about something. After nearly a year, I was leaving with the same single bag I had arrived with, containing neither more nor fewer belongings than before. As I walked toward the door carrying my bag, I heard Charlotte's mother say, "Aren't you going to check what is in her bag? What if she took some of your gold jewelry?" Although I had long known that this mother-daughter pair were not good people, I hadn't expected them to be quite so shameless. I looked at Sebastian, who was sitting nearby and had clearly heard every word his mother-in-law said, and called out loudly, "Do you want to search my bag? Do you want to see whether your mother, who doesn't own any jewelry at all, would steal your wife's gold necklace?" Sebastian, who hadn't said a word since I started packing, suddenly shouted at Charlotte, "Haven't you caused enough trouble? When will this end?" Charlotte and her mother were startled into silence by Sebastian's rare display of anger. Both lowered their heads without daring to make another sound. I took advantage of this moment to open the door and walk out without looking back. Sebastian had just finished elementary school when his father died from illness. Between the substantial medical debts and raising a son alone, I had no time for grief. I heard that small businesses required low investment but could generate income quickly, so every evening after work, I would walk through streets and alleys selling candied fruit skewers I made myself. Just when I felt that although life was hard, I could persist by gritting my teeth, waves of layoffs began. I lost my job and my stable monthly income. I could no longer continue living in employee housing. I had no choice but to take Sebastian back to our hometown, knowing that life wasn't easy for a woman raising a child alone, even though everyone's circumstances were far from comfortable. My late husband's relatives still provided us with the greatest possible help. This was especially true after Sebastian entered middle school and consistently ranked first in his grade on every exam. Whenever any family relatives had something good to eat, they would call him over specifically to help nourish his body properly. Perhaps due to these successive hardships, Sebastian matured early. From the moment we left the city where he was born and raised, Sebastian, who had previously been clever and lively, became quiet and withdrawn. But every time he experienced kindness, Sebastian would quietly express his gratitude. Because his grades remained consistently excellent, Sebastian was accepted to a very good university. However, tuition and living expenses presented yet another major challenge for me. It was Sebastian's uncle and his maternal uncle who nearly emptied their savings to ensure his smooth enrollment. I had always believed Sebastian was a child who understood gratitude at least until his marriage. He had behaved admirably. Once he started earning money. He knew to buy nutritional supplements for the family elders. Because his work location was far from home and he could only return during New Year celebrations, he would always arrive carrying many good things to give as gifts when making his rounds to pay respects. But everything changed after Sebastian married. His maternal uncle, who had doted on him since childhood, urgently needed 20,000 yuan for medical treatment. But Sebastian responded with difficulty, saying his salary was entirely consumed by mortgage payments. He could only offer verbal wishes for his uncle's speedy recovery, claiming he was powerless to help financially. But the very next day, I saw Charlotte post a photo of a handbag on social media. I didn't understand such things, but my niece later told me that Charlotte's new bag was worth exactly 20,000 yuan. 3 years ago, our hometown experienced flooding. Sebastian's uncle's house was severely damaged and needed rebuilding, leaving him desperately seeking loans everywhere. Knowing Sebastian had just received a bonus, I called hoping he could contribute something. But before Sebastian could speak, Charlotte interrupted. When we got married, we practically had nothing because we didn't have much money. But I endured everything because I loved him. When your son needed you most, you didn't provide much help. Now that his living conditions have improved somewhat, you turn around and find various excuses to ask him for money. Does that make sense? But the facts were nothing like what Charlotte described. Because I was skilled at cooking, after Sebastian entered university, I was introduced to work as a kitchen assistant at a hotel. Within a year and a half, I had repaid all the debts incurred after Sebastian's father's death. After working at the hotel for 2 more years, with help from family members, I opened a small restaurant. From then on, our family's circumstances gradually improved. When Sebastian married, although I couldn't afford to buy him a house with full payment, I provided more than half the down payment. When Charlotte demanded 100,000 yuan bride price plus gold jewelry, I unhesitatingly took out my retirement savings. Solely after providing all this did I truly lack funds for an elaborate wedding ceremony, so we had a simple celebration. This became what Charlotte referred to as our bare-bones wedding. Although I felt hurt, I knew there was no point in arguing about these matters. I asked Sebastian whether he remembered where his university expenses had come from. On the other end of the phone, Sebastian's breathing paused, but he still remained silent. I felt utterly disappointed and said frantically, "That was money. Your uncle's son earned working away from home to buy medicine for your uncle. He kept none of it for himself, giving it all just to ensure you could attend university smoothly. Yes, you are successful now, and it is normal to look down on poor relatives, but people must have conscience and know gratitude." That was my first time speaking harshly to Sebastian. Perhaps knowing he was in the wrong, or for some other reason, Sebastian eventually lent his uncle 50,000 yuan. It was precisely this 50,000 that caused Charlotte to develop resentment toward me. When I was hospitalized, she used her pregnancy as an excuse to prevent Sebastian from returning to see me even once. Although nearly 2 years had passed, I still remembered what she said then. "Mom, at my age, this pregnancy wasn't easy to achieve. What if Sebastian comes back from your place carrying some illness and it affects the health of the baby in my womb? As woman to woman, you should understand." I didn't know what kind of illness Sebastian could contract from me having surgery for uterine fibroids, but I was indeed disappointed in this son once again. During my hospitalization, it was his aunt and uncle's wife who came to care for me. When I cried and spoke about wanting to sever my relationship with Sebastian, they consoled me, saying family harmony brings prosperity, and Charlotte's words were understandable given her circumstances. They urged me to be understanding and show more consideration for young people's difficulties. So when Charlotte gave birth to my little grandson and both of them humbled themselves before me, saying they needed my help, I packed my bags without hesitation and came to the city where they lived. Fearing I might not provide adequate care, I prepared money for a nanny. But Charlotte said she wasn't that delicate and felt reassured with me there. At that time, I believed the barriers between Charlotte and me had completely disappeared, and I wholeheartedly cared for both her and the child. But afterward, Charlotte reverted to her previous behavior, often treating me with indifference. Although I felt wronged, I knew that mother-in-law and daughter-in-law relationships had been challenging since ancient times, Afraid of putting Sebastian in a difficult position, I endured what I could and rarely mentioned problems between Charlotte and me to him. But my tolerance didn't earn understanding. Instead, it led to their increasingly excessive behavior. When they needed me, they could say any sweet words. When they no longer needed me, they immediately wanted me out of their sight. The train journey from my hometown to Sebastian City took nearly 10 hours. Knowing family members had set out early and traveled such a long distance, I booked several hotel rooms, wanting them to rest overnight before meeting with Sebastian. But Sebastian's uncle refused. Sister Patrick died early, and Sebastian turned out this way partly because I, as his uncle, didn't do enough. We didn't come here to enjoy ourselves. Let's settle this matter quickly and return home together. Patrick's youngest daughter, Fiona, immediately added, Eleanor, although we'll all soon receive a substantial sum of money, we can't treat money so carelessly. Cancel these rooms. We already bought return tickets when we got off the train. There is nothing good about this place once we finish our business. We're leaving, we won't waste time here. From the moment my brother and sister-in-law entered and saw me, their eyes filled with tears. My sister-in-law held my hands, continuously stroking them. Eleanor, you are not even 60 yet. How do you look older than your brother? What exactly have you endured this past year? Hearing this, my brother erupted with profanity. When I see Sebastian, I am definitely going to give him a kick. His own mother has been worn down. Like this, is he blind? With that, my brother headed for the door, turning back as he reached it. Lead the way, we're going to have it out with that beast right now. A group of us arrived at Sebastian's door, waiting for me to unlock it. Unfortunately, my fingerprint had been deleted from the system. Seeing this, my brother immediately began kicking the door. Sebastian, open this door right now. The sound of kicking and my brother's shouting attracted considerable attention from neighbors. Charlotte's mother came to open the door, initially somewhat displeased. But when she saw the angry faces outside, her own face went pale with fright. My sister-in-law pushed her aside and led our group inside. Leo was probably frightened by the earlier commotion and was crying in Charlotte's arms. When he saw me, Leo struggled to come down to me, but Charlotte wouldn't let him. What do you people want? Making such a racket, believe it or not, I'll call the police. Charlotte tried to sound fierce but was clearly intimidated. Speaking while hiding behind Sebastian without daring to lift her head, my brother kept his word the moment he saw Sebastian. He delivered a solid kick. Sebastian, caught off guard, fell to his knees, immediately breaking out in cold sweat from the pain. Mom, what are you standing there for? Call the police. Charlotte, standing behind Sebastian, wanted to help but didn't dare. She could only shout at her bewildered mother. Nobody stopped her mother from calling the police. Sebastian's uncle sat on the sofa, and when Sebastian looked up, he immediately saw him. Uncle, you all, don't call me uncle, his uncle thundered, cutting off Sebastian's words. We came here today at your mother's invitation to witness you severing your mother-son relationship. No need for idle chatter, bring paper and pen. Sebastian was in too much pain to move immediately. Charlotte had no choice but to run and fetch what the uncle demanded. The police station wasn't far from this residential complex, so after Charlotte's mother made her call, officers arrived within 10 minutes. Seeing the room full of people, most of them elderly, the officers moderated their tone. Who called the police? Come forward and explain what happened. Just as Charlotte's mother was about to speak, Fiona smoothly interrupted. She called the police. She and her daughter think we broke into their home, but we knocked and were let in. Fiona had always been articulate since childhood. In just a few sentences, she clearly explained the entire situation. Charlotte and her mother felt frustrated, but couldn't claim Fiona was lying. While Fiona was speaking, Sebastian's uncle finished writing the severance document in duplicate. The moment Fiona stopped talking, he immediately presented the documents to the two officers. We understand that severance documents have no legal validity and the law doesn't recognize the actual severing of blood relationships between mother and son. It is just that my poor sister raised this son through such hardship, only to end up with an ungrateful wolf who doesn't know how to be thankful. Our entire family cannot tolerate having such a beast among us. Since you two officers are here, we'd like to ask you to witness this." The uncle spoke diplomatically, and the police couldn't find grounds to refuse, especially since he had prefaced his remarks by acknowledging legal limitations. He simply wanted everyone present to understand that from now on, there would be no connection between Sebastian and me. Sebastian, having recovered from the initial pain, finally stood up. He looked at me with a complex expression. "Mom, I thought what you said yesterday was spoken in anger. Do you really want to take things this far?" Hearing this, Charlotte became upset. But with so many people in the room, she didn't dare speak up. She could only keep making eye signals at Sebastian. But Sebastian never looked at her. "I don't deserve to be called your mother," I said. This single sentence left Sebastian speechless. After reviewing the severance documents, the officers exchanged glances. "This is your family matter. Work things out among yourselves." Everyone except Leo understood the implication of these words. Whether we severed our relationship or not wasn't their concern. As long as the situation didn't escalate, this remained a family matter for us to resolve ourselves. But those words were enough. I signed my name on both documents and pressed my fingerprint. Under the intimidating stares of his uncle and maternal uncle, Sebastian reluctantly went through the same process. Sebastian's uncle folded one copy of the severance document and handed it to me, then said to Sebastian, "We ordinary families don't have genealogical records, but when we return home, I'll make it clear to all the villagers that from now on, the Cole family has no such person as you." To have family members make this trip for a legally meaningless severance document made me feel genuinely guilty. On our way to the train station, Fiona sensed my thoughts and linked her arm with mine, whispering softly, "Eleanor, don't overthink this. My mother and Sebastian's aunt felt terrible during the entire journey here. They believe that if they hadn't advised you to endure everything back then, you wouldn't have suffered this past year's worth of grievances. We're family, and knowing we came to help you, we're all very willing participants." Fiona's words brought me some comfort. At the same time, I had formed plans for the demolition compensation I was about to receive. This demolition was due to urban planning. For our old house plus the land area, besides receiving a replacement apartment, I would also get more than 100,000 yuan in cash. Time quickly moved to December. Because Sebastian had cut off contact with hometown people after his marriage, he only learned about the house demolition after everything was settled. On this particular day, I had just returned from grocery shopping and was about to enter our residential complex when the security guard called out, "Eleanor, someone's been looking for you since early morning," but I didn't let them in. Following the guard's gaze, I saw a car parked across from the complex. Probably seeing me turn around and recognizing me, someone immediately got out of the car. After more than 2 months, Sebastian seemed to have gained some weight. He strode over to me with a somewhat awkward expression. "Mom, where were you just now?" We arrived very early, and Leo fell asleep waiting. People I knew from hometown were almost all aware that Sebastian and I had severed our relationship. But not everyone would consider things from your perspective. Sebastian must have received precise information about which complex I lived in from someone who had told him something. Where I go has nothing to do with you. I am not suffering from dementia yet. I remember that we no longer have any relationship, I replied. Sebastian gave an embarrassed laugh. "Mom, we're still biological mother and son after all. That severance document doesn't count. Leo missed you, so we brought him to see you." By this time, Charlotte had gotten out of the car with Leo. Honestly, I could do without my son. But Leo was the grandson I had raised with my own hands. There wasn't a day I didn't miss him. But missing him was all I could do. At Leo's age, he couldn't retain many memories. so after some time apart, his eyes showed unfamiliarity when he looked at me. As Charlotte carried him toward me, he kept struggling and calling to go home. "Mom, Leo has been calling for Grandma constantly lately," Charlotte said, trying to hand Leo to me. But the child took one look at me, immediately buried his head in her chest, and whimpered continuously. Sebastian and Charlotte exchanged glances, both showing the same embarrassment. "Stop using the child as a shield." "I know why you are here to find me," I said. Charlotte's expression relaxed, and joy appeared in her eyes. But Sebastian couldn't even bear to look at me anymore. "Don't just stand here. Come along, I happen to have something to give you," I told them. When we had distributed the replacement housing, Sebastian's uncle had pulled strings to arrange for several of our families to live together. Perhaps seeing Sebastian and Charlotte following behind me through the windows. By the time we reached my door, they were followed by quite a few more people. When it came time to enter, there were roughly the same number of people as on the day we severed our relationship, just minus Charlotte's mother. Sebastian greeted everyone individually, but nobody acknowledged him. Being blocked by others, he was the last to enter, only to find no available seating for himself and Charlotte. When I emerged from the bedroom carrying a document, Charlotte, who had been looking displeased, excitedly nudged Sebastian with her elbow. I didn't waste words and handed the document directly to Sebastian. Charlotte quickly pushed Leo into Sebastian's arms and snatched the document from his hands. After scanning just a few lines, she looked up in surprise. "Mom, why did you give the money directly to Leo, and he can't even use it until he comes of age?" When Sebastian heard this, he immediately looked down at the document too, I replied calmly. "It is my money, and I can give it to whoever I want and decide when they can spend it. Do you have objections?" Charlotte slapped Sebastian's arm, and seeing he wouldn't speak, she said anxiously, "We asked around before coming here. Besides this house, you have more than 100,000 yuan in cash, even if you only want Leo to have it. Why is it just 20,000? Where is the rest of the money?" Before I could respond, Sebastian's uncle roared, "Is this any of your business? Who are you losing your temper with?" Sebastian's uncle had served in the military in his youth. Although decades had passed, his habit of speaking loudly had never changed. People unfamiliar with him were easily intimidated by his booming voice. Sure enough, Charlotte was startled into immediate silence by that shout. Sebastian's expression had been complex from the moment he saw me, and I was too lazy to guess what he might be thinking. Watching him read the document's contents, I didn't rush him and asked Fiona to help pour water for the others. Several minutes later, Sebastian finally spoke. "Mom, we came looking for you because of the demolition money. It is true, after you left, many things happened at home. Our company implemented cost-cutting measures and laid off many people. Although I wasn't on the layoff list, my salary is much less than before." I watched him quietly without saying anything. Seeing this, Charlotte once again braved Sebastian's uncle's intimidating stare to speak. "Mom, we really had no other choice. With Sebastian's reduced salary, after paying the mortgage each month and covering living expenses, we barely have anything left. Watching Leo grow day by day, if things continue like this, we won't be able to make it." Fiona interjected. "I heard you really love buying gold jewelry. Now that gold prices have risen, if you sold those treasures of yours, you could get quite a bit of money, right?" Charlotte immediately refused. "Why should I? I bought all of those with my own money." Fiona shot back, "Then why are you coveting Eleanor's money? When your lives were comfortable, you thought it was wasteful to even buy Eleanor a plane ticket. Now that you can't make ends meet, you remember Eleanor exists. You are not that pretty, but your dreams sure are beautiful. Who do you think you are?" Charlotte was so angry she pointed at Fiona, ready to curse. I was just heading to the kitchen to wash fruit for my sister-in-law and the others. As I passed Charlotte, I forcefully slapped her hand down. "Didn't your mother teach you not to point at people when you speak, ill-mannered creature?" Charlotte's face flushed with anger. She wanted Sebastian to defend her, but Sebastian ignored her. Mom, I was wrong. Suddenly, Sebastian knelt before me. I glanced at him once, then looked away and continued washing fruit in the kitchen. When I returned with the fruit platter, Sebastian was still kneeling there, while Charlotte looked extremely unwilling, but kept her head down without speaking. Stop wasting time here. What I can give is this much. Take it if you want it, or you can leave right now if you don't, I said. Sebastian looked up in disbelief. Mom, are you really going to refuse to save us? I am your biological son. Hearing this, Fiona threw the orange peel in her hand directly at Sebastian's face. Now you know Eleanor is your biological mother. Where were you when Eleanor was hospitalized for surgery? What were you doing when Eleanor was so exhausted her back couldn't straighten? What did you do when Eleanor was so upset by your wife that she couldn't sleep night after night? After Fiona finished, Sebastian's uncle immediately continued, talking about the period when I had just brought Sebastian back to our hometown, describing how hard our lives were and how difficult those days had been. As Sebastian listened, his eyes grew red, his straight back collapsed, and he murmured, I was wrong, because Dad died too early. When I was just starting middle school, I was constantly bullied. I didn't dare fight back because fighting back meant getting beaten up. Over time, except when I was studying and could calm down, I spent all my other time resenting you, resenting why you brought me into this world, resenting why you found me such a sickly father, resenting why you couldn't earn money, resenting why you couldn't let me eat good food. Listening to Sebastian's words, both his uncle and my brother were because when Sebastian was 15, I had accidentally seen his diary, which contained similar sentiments. At the time, I thought he was just going through a rebellious phase, so I forgot about it after reading it. I still had many other things that needed my attention. It wasn't until Sebastian married and became increasingly reluctant to contact me that I gradually understood. This child had become a different person very early on. Nobody knew how many times I had searched online for information about parent-child relationships, or that I had even gone to the library to read books about parenting. Gradually, I found the answer I was seeking. Every person is an independent individual. Even children who share our blood, we cannot demand they grow according to our wishes. They have their own paths to walk. Whether what lies ahead is smooth sailing or thorny obstacles, everyone has their own consequences to face. I had done everything I possibly could. My conscience was clear. As for the rest, I would let Sebastian lay on the ground crying. Woo-woo. Once he had calmed down, I handed him something I had retrieved from the television cabinet. This house doesn't have a property deed yet, but I've already had a lawyer write a will. As soon as the deed is issued, this house will be transferred to Fiona. I hadn't told anyone about this, so Fiona and her parents were shocked and immediately said they couldn't accept it. I gestured for them to stay calm. Don't worry, I have conditions. While I am healthy and can take care of myself, I have the right to live in this house. If my health deteriorates, Fiona is responsible for getting me to the hospital. Whether the money I've left behind is enough for medical treatment depends on the actual circumstances. As for the money you've been coveting, I looked toward Sebastian and Charlotte. Besides the $20,000 reserved for Leo, I donated $50,000 to a charitable foundation. The certificate is right there in your hands. The remaining money will partly fund my travels and partly serve as my retirement savings. Not a single penny is related to you, Charlotte panicked. Just as she was about to say something, Sebastian angrily shouted, "Shut up!" Sebastian stood up, looked deeply at me, and bowed. "If this is what you want, then I'll respect your wishes. From today forward, I won't disturb your life again." Having traveled such a long distance, only for Leo to receive some money he couldn't access for many years, while gaining nothing herself, Charlotte was naturally dissatisfied. Seeing Sebastian turn to leave, she shouted angrily at his retreating figure, "You coward! What good are you?" No sooner had she finished speaking than Sebastian turned and slapped her. Charlotte wanted to make more trouble, but Sebastian gave her no opportunity, carrying Leo with one hand and dragging Charlotte outside with the other. I lived on the ground floor, so after they left, we could clearly hear another slapping sound from inside the house, though we didn't know who had hit whom after they left. I found myself surrounded by everyone. Fiona held the will uncertainly. "Eleanor, I can't accept this house. You need to have the lawyer change the will immediately." I ignored her and explained to everyone why I had made this decision. My brother's family had received twice as much in housing and money from their demolition as I had. He and my sister-in-law had only one son who was very successful, having partnered with friends to open a factory. The money he earned annually now exceeded what my brother had received from demolition. Sebastian's uncle's family circumstances were much worse. They had 3 children. The 2 older sons had left home early to work. One lost a hand in a work accident, and the other became permanently lame after a car accident 2 years ago. Because their family had little land, they received the least compensation. The 2 sons' physical disabilities already made finding wives difficult. And while this demolition had attracted some interest, every potential bride's family demanded exorbitant betrothal gifts. Sebastian's uncle's family wasn't biased against daughters. On the contrary, Fiona, as the child with the best academic performance, had been pampered by the family since childhood. But faced with reality, someone always had to make sacrifices. The replacement housing we received was in an ordinary location. This house wouldn't be worth much even if sold, and finding buyers would be difficult. Leaving the house to Fiona was meant to give her a place of her own. Whether she married in the future or not, she would have confidence in her heart. Moreover, as I had said, by accepting my house, she would need to visit me regularly. If I became ill, she would also have to contribute effort. After hearing my explanation, my brother and sister-in-law didn't react much, but Sebastian's uncle and his wife cried uncontrollably. Come spring, I began traveling with tour groups. Throughout the year, I was rarely home for more than a few days at a time. I had ridden in airplanes and on cruise ships, driven speedboats, and experienced hot air balloon rides. Though my age increased day by day, my mental state improved daily. I had truly learned to live for myself. Later, I heard news about Sebastian and Charlotte from Hannah. They divorced when Leo was 3 years old. The catalyst was Sebastian being laid off. When the couple couldn't make mortgage payments and Charlotte's parents had helped twice before saying they could no longer provide money, Sebastian soon discovered Charlotte was having an affair. During the divorce proceedings, because Sebastian lacked stable employment, Leo was awarded to Charlotte. Hannah said that shortly after their divorce, Charlotte remarried and moved to another city with Leo. As for Sebastian, their house was sold during the divorce, with each taking half the proceeds. Since then, no one familiar with him knew his whereabouts. Having escaped from heartbreaking situations early, I managed to live a healthy life until age 86. On the day I sensed my end approaching, I called Fiona in advance, then slowly walked outside to a small river not far from home. Leaning against a large tree, I reflected on my entire. Although the first half had been filled with hardship, at least for the following decades, I had been happy. That is our story for today. We hope you enjoyed this incredible tale. Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. Subscribe for more captivating stories like this, and don't forget to like and share this video. Thank you for being here with us. See you next time.